and Raging Bolt just edges out because its damage falls a little short oftentimes.
Let's go.
It's been a while since I did another Beyond the Meta, so we'll do a state of play for October in 2025. So this article was the top decks at the beginning of the month. You'll see the date there where it's saying the 1st of October. So that is not too long afterwards, and that's after release of Mega Evolutions. So a lot of debates will be there on what will the top deck be, and to know what the top deck is, you have to know what happened going into the format and what led into the current format. So this will be just after Mega Evolutions release, because by today's the 21st of October, it's been about 3 weeks since we have full access to the cards and all that, but this was at the beginning of the format. So again, best deck in format, no surprise, Guardy, one world, one worlds, and this was the standard build here. So you're seeing 3 rolls, Screamtail, God of War, the new Curlias, we have Mystery Gardens. Nothing too big, right? So deck list, we could always look that up. And we see in here the main pieces, this is what has been added. Then we're going down to number 2. We had Dusknoir Dragapult build. So I don't want to say Dragapult Dusknoir build, sorry. And again, this is roughly standard build kinda. So you're seeing the 4 Dracloaks, 4 Drippies, 2 Pulse, Hawklucha for damage. Nothing out of the ordinary. If we come down to the supporters, we'll see that this was not the build that the world champion run-up used, but an update with the 4 Lazy Termination, right? And that's number 2. The price range also not that bad. Some of these builds seem expensive, but that's because they are playing the SIRs, which are a bit pricey. But if you take away that $50 price tag, the deck is around the same price. And at number 3 going in, we have Golden Go. Again, this updated build, still Genesect, but they are running the Lunatone Solrock, because again, this gets around those pesky Mimikyus and Lockoffs, as well as helping you get Raro's energy, get your energy, and that kind of thing. I don't want to get rid of energy, to get your energy and a bit more the draw power. So again, pretty good. And at number 4, no surprise, we had Enzo because it was riding high right after Worlds with the big turnout of the index. So that's also here. You don't not seeing much big changes outside of Hilda's, and Hilda's already there, so we're not seeing any big change here in terms of the deck list and new cards from Mega Evolutions. And number 5, Mani's Snarl. We have Yveltal with that clutch ability to help lock them in while they go up. And going down the list, again just Lazy Termination. So already going into the format, and we've seen Lazy Termination being a big staple even in the beginning of the format, where that ability to early game join to 8 getting used, and it actually took the place of a couple of the Ionos in some of these builds. Again, standard build, Terra Box, nothing there, nothing crazy, but don't be surprised if surprising no determination here, but again, nothing new. Creating that might have been added have been determination. So you're not seeing that there, and with that, those are the top 6 decks from the beginning of the format. And a good look at them would be, unless something directly helps the deck, they didn't really change much. And this list is roughly the same. Raging Bolt not up here, so that's a bit of a shift. We're not seeing those jolting boxes and that sort of thing. It might be this person's preference, But again, this is TCG Player, one of the writers, Natalie Miller here. She's from Australia, so she's a bit reputable. So from this, we can already see it had a little bit of shaping. But then we fast forward to 3 weeks, and let's look at the actual deck stats. Now, we still have Guardian on top. Still strong, start at 18% mark. We use Limitless, as you can see here. We use Limitless because it tracks those online tournaments and as well as physical tournaments. So we get some stable numbers relatively quickly. At number 2, we have something new here, which wasn't expected on the list, which is the Absol Kangaskhan builds, which are also very popular at 12%. So that's like 2% above the next deck and leaps and bounds over the rest. Then we have Mani's Grim Snarl, no surprise, at 3. It was one of the top 8 decks. Going into Worlds, we have Gold and Go, and then we have Dragapult. So firstly, Mani's deck is pretty strong across the board. So it doesn't have any glaring weaknesses. So that's why it hasn't really changed in position. Gold and Go is also capable of getting rid of the Megas. Excuse me. And doesn't have too big of a damage cap, so it can still knock those Megas out. So it's still up there. Dragapult, however, became a slight bit weaker because it is not capable of one-shotting any of the Megas, but it can still two-shot and do its setups as well. But there is the addition of the Psyduck with the damp ability that stops the Dusknoir from going off. That's why you're not seeing the Dusknoir pult here. So that's a thing to note. Then we have the Ceruledges, which have started going back up because people are testing it because of Phantasmal Flames. You're going to have a lot of fire support, especially that fire, I can't remember. There's a fire water that brings 7 fire energy to your hand, which will be a significant boost for the Ceruledge. So this has also started picking up in popularity. Then of course, number 7, Old Faithful Charizard, coming right back up. So we're seeing not too far off, and a lot of familiar decks. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This was already a 6, and of course we have the Terra boxes. We just went through the list, and we can go through again and see how they're doing. Again, that's the top 8 decks. But if we extend or reach down to 10, we'll see Raging Bolt and a flat Kangaskhan here. If we go down to 15, we'll find Crustle. So Crustle is still slightly creeping up, but don't think that Typhlosion that far behind or the Firebox far behind. The Flareon box is still there because it's slightly different than Terra box, because this is the Eevee box deck there, and we still have Enzorak breaking in, and even that Pidgeot control deck there. But again, we'll just be dealing with the top 10. So we already see Gardevoir here. So let's give it a try. Let's see what the standard Gardevoir decks have in them. So again, you get a percentage here of what's in the decks. You have at least 98% of decks. 100% have at least 1 copy. 100% have 2 copies of the Gardevoir there. And we see any percentages going all the way across. So all have 7 energy. They all have 4 Ultra Balls. They all have 2 Gardevoirs. And they all are running 1 Kirlias for most of these builds. Right, and the ones that are recorded here. So that's tournaments as well as the online ones on live. We also see in at least 2 rare candies and 3 of those Earth and Seal vessels. Again, the only thing new here again is the Lazy Termination, and this deck is still number 1. So what that tells us is a lot of draw power going in the game, and I can see here the only disruption is in the form of Iono. Again, that's 4 copies, so that's a lot of disruption, but that's with good reason. So we'll go back out, we'll look at a Dragapult and see what that has turned into. Again, we see the Lazy Termination, but no other real change outside of, again, the Luminous Energy. So you don't have to go over how this works. That gives additional draw power early game, and we have that disruption here. No big change. So if we go down to even the Gold and Go has one of the biggest changes in the form of those Lunatoons and Solrocks. It's not here because it has a mixture. They are also running the standard builds. We can see here what their deck performances was like, and if you notice, most of them are the Lunatone Solrock builds. What we get here is the commonality between all the decks, but you see that Lunatone Solrock almost exclusively, and all the top builds are Lunatone Solrock. So if we go into one of their deck lists, we'll see 2 copies of each, and I'm pretty sure if we go in, you'll see similarly supporters change, but 2 copies of each. So this is standard build and copies of it, and they just shuffle around the supporters. And let's keep going to all those in the top 8. We already drag apart. Let's do the Mani's Grimmsnarl next. And again, we're looking at it. Very, very standard. So 3 monkeys, 3 of these, 2 of these, 2 of these, standard. The iffy is how much of the first classes they are running. Again, the decks are very, very similar, almost 100% on everything here. Everything is over 95 because this is all but a standard build. The only adjustments to play would be how many copies are being run, and possibly 1 or 2 decks weren't running or more than 2 copies of this, and that's why the number will vary, as well as the number of dark energies. So again, they all play these cards. But again, we see the placements here going down, no variation. So again, only card added is that Lily's Determination. So we're moving on again, and let's get into our last 2 standard builds. Let's go to Serial Edge. And again, like I said, they take the extra draw with this because it's a 1 prize version of what they were previously doing with the Golden Goals as a additional engine, or even those Drag Cloaks as an engine. But this is far more consistent, especially with the gum, because you can actually search for the missing piece or the missing energy. One thing that isn't here that's in some builds is the Drill Bird that allows you to dump 3 or 5, I don't remember which one, of your rock energies into the grave, which is a good bit of acceleration. So that's what we see in going into the format. And there we go, straight down. And if we look at the list, let's see if they are running any of it. There we go, you see that 1 drill bar. We go in again, this one doesn't have the drill bar. Let's go to 3. Again, a squawk, but no drill bar. So you see the variations there. An iron bundle here, no drill bar. But the top deck actually had the drill bar here. So this is the drill bar, and it is 3 basic rock energies when you play it from your hand. So that's a thing to note, but again, this Briar in all copies. And next we'll go into our final deck that was up here, being Charizard. And again, no surprise, the big change being Lily's Determination in over 90% of the decks. And the question is, what can we learn from that? What we learn from that is that since there's so much disruption and draw in the format, and from Iono and Lily's Determination, a bit of hand destruction would be very good. There's also an Alakazam deck that's making its way through Formula and being very popular. Not here on the list. We have even Mega Lucario at number 24, which draws an amazing amount of cards. And simply using Iono isn't really a response because it's a 1 prize a fight, and it won't be able to do that much in the same sense. So all these top decks have that determination. A 0 sec would be very, very useful. At a 1 copy or 2 copies in your deck will be able to get rid of a lot of resources. Yes, they'll keep a couple of cards, but you allow a lot of their resources to go. Because again, that drawing into 8 cards is insane, and that's on top of possibly the Fez to get them to 11, any other tutors, any other draws on their benches, is something you really need to keep note of. But now let's get into the decks that have risen, because remember, this deck came out of nowhere and is sitting at second, the Mega Venusaur box. So it's a box deck, so again, there'll be different variations of them. So you can see again 100% Psyduck, because that's the tech against Dust Snow. So that's problems. We have the Cornerstone here, which again is a lock against those decks with effect Pokemon. We have 2 copies of Kangaskhan, 2 copies of Ivysaur. So again, we get that draw power, we get that hand disruption, the free retreat, the swap and stuff to just help them around. I find this build clunky, but a lot of people really like it. I reviewed it, and again, it's not weak, but I find it very clunky. But it does give you, as a box deck, a lot of options on what you want to do. We have this energy to protect, which helps protect against Dragapult and a lot of those effects from attacks. Because this requires just colorless energy, it means that anything can work. Same here, a lot of colorless energy, so it keeps the deck at least very functional. You have a finisher in the form of Ursaluna, so the deck does what it does and does it well most of the time. Again, we have a bit of hand disruption in the form of Ionos, commonly 2, but again we see the Lily's Determination. So with the combination of these 2 cards here would be a typical getting 10 cards in your hand at the beginning of their turn. Yes, they use a supporter, but with 10 cards, they have almost all these non-supporter options available, which is mildly difficult to beat. Because the point of this deck is actually just move the damage off one of your active Pokemon to help you get the knockout. If I get 2 off, you'll get a straight knockout with the Absol. You have a wall to block, and this could also be an attacker, and same thing, damage gets moved off, and you finish them here, because this could hit upwards of 200, this is 200, and taking resources from their hand, and since the deck runs all basics, they have this suite to get them an extra 88 points, which puts them out of range of a lot of damage and a lot of attacks. On top of that, we have Penny, which makes sure we don't lose the energy, tools, or anything attached to them, so you get a really nice reset. And again, standard build, everybody runs 2 copies of Penny. And if we look at their performance, there was a recent tournament where it took 3 of the top 8 places, and even if we look here, we can see it had a lot of top 30 finishes, even comparing to something like Gardy or even Dragapult. And this deck is fairly new. So again, is to keep these things in mind, and what can you do for your deck that'll keep it functional no matter if you're playing a big tournament or small. And right now the commonality seems to be Determination, and this side, okay, it's very expensive. I think it's around $18 because it's only available as a promo, and we are seeing the only destruction people playing as Iono currently. So looking at that, we simply already seeing where now the format has shifted to drawing many cards, or trying to get access to as much resources as possible, and leading into a more item heavy format. And this is the flat Kangaskhan here. They have Buffalo to reduce the damage on the Kangaskhan. Again, decent item. This cards are 100% off, and everything else varies. So again, Crispin, Cornerstone, Blood Moons, that sort of stuff. So we don't have to be too concerned about that. And again, Terror Box hasn't changed, so you don't have to even go over that list. Only Lazy Determination has been added to it. So, now for the summary. Now that we've seen what all these decks contain and what they do, how can this knowledge help you in your deck construction as well as your matches? Knowing now that many decks have upwards of 7 pieces of draw power and disruption, the chances of them getting those cards are very high. On top of that, it being a very item heavy format, because looking at the top decks, if we look at the list, it contains a lot of items, because since they have the Lazy Determination, they aren't playing as many supporters, because they are just trying to get into these items as fast as possible and just churn through their decks. The same will be said for Mega Venusaur. Again, minimal supporter, but lots of items to be used and tools to be used, if you look at it carefully. Again, we go down to Marnie's Grimmsnarl. They are slightly different, but again, heavy item format and slight tools. And with that in mind, that means that your ability to disrupt items is very crucial in this format. Across the board, no matter who you're fighting against, but you also need to have that hand disruption, which is lacking in most of these top decks, to give it that little edge. Yes, the meta calls for, again, just uniformity, seen it here, but seen against prevalence of special energy, because we're not seeing the ace spec here, but a lot of them using new upper energy. It has Genesect to help us get around those. We have enhanced hammers, because we really want to get rid of special energies at any cost. They add a lot to the format and a lot to the decks. And if we look through this, a lot of the top decks are playing special energies, so it won't be a dead card. And getting rid of any of their cards would be a benefit, because the card selection right now is also very high. Because even in the Terra box here, we have the card selection on top of the determination, which will allow them to do some crazy things. This is a longer video, so I don't know if no one actually gets all the way through, but now we'll have a light discussion on those niche decks that further to the bottom. Because again, the format has changed drastically in just this past month or so, or 3 weeks, and we're seeing a slight shake up in how the decks are being played and how the movement has been. Because our Typhlosion has been at around 18 previously into Worlds, and has made it up to 16. We also seen a lot of decks no longer here, because remember, they need to cross the new barrier to get into the top 10, and that new barrier is Mega Pokémon and their high hit points. So because you need to have a deck that's sufficiently able to at least kill them in 1 or 2 hits, any deck unable to do that is very much low on the list. Because coming up against those decks without that ability is very difficult, because 3 attacks to kill a Mega, where it can take you out, is a bit hard to work with, unless you have some manner of control or something like that running through your deck. So that's what we're looking at here. And even though a lot of these decks are walls and not like this draft rig deck, it still is difficult to get over that hurdle. Same with Archelodon and even the Frostlass Monkey-Dory. Because remember, a lot of the Megas also don't have effects, so the Frostlass strategy isn't as strong. But that doesn't mean it's a weak card, because again, in this Monkey-Dory build with the Grimmsnarls, it means that they are still playing it and it's still functional. But that's because they're not dependent on their opponent's Pokemon. And again, what these top decks have in common is a high level of consistency. They work, they do one thing, they do that one thing very well. We have the Gardevoir, which draws, gets into Gardevoir, puts off damage, and consistently is able to put that damage in, get the card draw, and all those other things. New, we have the Absol Kangaskhan, which, though it is a bit clunky, which may be streamlined further down, it does what it does well. Draws cards and makes the best of all situations. Again, that's the box decks. And then we have the Marnie's Grimmsnarl. Again, get to Grimmsnarl and start putting in that work. Use monkeys to put damage and see if you can get those knockouts on the bench as fast as possible. And that's pretty good. Dragapult, just pull it in, shoot at them, shoot at the back. Go and go, draws cards, discards energy, and puts out crazy amounts of damage. And that's what we're talking about when you talk about just the output and consistency of decks. Again, the flexibility of the box decks with things like Terra Box. That's why it's still there in the top 8, even though Raging Bolt got edged out. And Raging Bolt is just slightly less consistent than all these decks on top of the list here. It's not bad by any means, but the ability to cross those Megas exists in all these decks on top here. And Raging Bolt just edges out because its damage falls a little short oftentimes. Because it's very easy for them to get to that 4 energy saturation point, but to get to the 5 energy, to hit that 350 is a bit of a task. And then to keep that output, to do it twice very quickly, isn't always in the cards for them. By Terra Box, you'll be able to select the best parts given the situation. Charizard will 2-shot anyone, and later in the game, stronger it gets. Because now there's a build using the maximum belt, which gets it to 380 damage. So you can actually fight them down with one prize and get a clutch win. Ceruledge, the only cap you have is how much energy you're running. So again, that good ability, Dragapult can two-shot any Mega without question. So it's there, one shot, and again, that ability to two-shot Megas. Same thing up here, Kangaskhan can one-shot a Mega. He two-shots a Mega with Disruption, he has Draw Power. So they both are very active, and on top of that, that 300 hit point is not the highest, but with the additions can get up to upwards of 380. Well, 380 at the cap, and if you're playing the belt, you get up to 430. Here, you get a reasonable amount out of it, but the colorless in the attack here makes it very strong. And of course, on top you have Guardy, who has crazy damage output. All the draw, every metric, Guardy has it. In terms of responses, everything, Guardy has it. It is on top for that reason. And even if the addition of one Mega Gardevoir into the decks, which in a lot of the rogue builds and that kind of stuff, is just to add that little unk of power to get it to knock out anything. Because remember, they get 50 damage for every energy attached to all of your Pokemon the Mega Gardevoir. So a couple people just have one slinking in the build to just get that last 3 prize knockout against a Mega to just for a surprise upset. So that's been my analysis of the meta up until this point, and we'll take another look in a couple of weeks on the actual meta analysis with this and going beyond the meta. Now we have this information, I'll use this to compile a deck going forward, and this is the reason why I chose my deck that I'm currently climbing with, which is my Disgusting Absol deck, which is almost completely hand disruption, and that's what has gotten me up to Arceus. And that's why it's so effective in the current format, and a lot of people just surrender because they are unable to get that amount of cards in their hand. And when you start taking it apart, because when they draw into 8 and you put it down to 3 and you take away their next evolution, there isn't much that can be done. You get rid of the lazy determination, so you have to top deck. They are top decking one item at a time, so they can't actually put together the pieces. We have good coverage in Gardevoir, so meaning we have a good bit there with the Absol deck. In the mirror match, my deck is a bit faster than this. Again here, he has to at least two-shot us, and again, the hand disruption makes it hard for him to evolve. Against Golden Ghost, same thing, because again, they depend on combos and big hands to get their pieces to be very effective. And as long as you can take that apart, you have a good chance, because even against the Charizard, the straight Absol deck is so strong. I'll do another meta-analysis directly on the deck on Saturday, and I'll break down exactly why my deck is built the way it is. But if you've been here all this time, thanks, I appreciate it, and hopefully we could have another chat, and this has been a bit more informative, so you don't have to literally look up all these things yourself. You get a good idea, and if you want to build the decks, again, my places I look for deck lists and how well decks are doing are typically limitless because of their large sample pool. And then we have TCG Player, because again, this is where a lot of cards and statistics will come from. You don't have to worry about the articles and stuff like that, but you'll get a good idea of card prices and sales, and you can see what cards are moving and how expensive they are in adding and changing the format. So, I hope again, you have a good day, enjoy, and I am out. Bye. Again, thanks for tuning in. Fuck me, fuck this game. Bye.